Hey guys, what's going on? This is Brad from the Ad Army, and today I want to introduce you to my new series. This is going to be first the How to Budget series. Now, for a long time, when I started this channel and originally when I was on Rumble, I decided that at some point I was going to make videos that aren't just about entertainment, and this is going to be some of them. So this is going to focus more on how to balance out your life, your money, and trying to make sure that you're on the right path. And before I begin, I just wanted to tell you guys that this is not a one-to-one representation. So if you have a better way to do this, or you're pretty sure you can take care of it, and honestly, if you can afford, paying for a lot of this stuff, it's not really going to be that much of an issue. But these are for the people, the vast majority of us who are trying to figure out how to navigate. Maybe we're just starting out in the game and we want to just know what's the best way to go about saving our money. Because let's be honest, when it comes to Yu-Gi-Oh, your wallet will be empty sometimes. So without further ado, let's jump into it. And once again, thank you guys. So let's get to it. In the game of Yu-Gi-Oh, decks and deck cores can cost a lot of money, especially when trying to just get everything together. You could be looking at hundreds, even if thousands of dollars. And with the current metagames always revolving around brand new cards and brand new sets, sometimes it's hard to make sure that we're up to date and making sure that we're taking care of our money. However, this doesn't mean that we empty out our wallet, and this doesn't mean we go broke on it. My goal is to help you guys get stabilized, and we're going to start off by trying to figure out how to maintain our money, but also at the same time, what are the best aspects to look at when trying to construct the best deck for your money. Now, a few caveats before we begin. We obviously don't want to pick something meta trending, is why I'm also making this video. If you're going to pick something up that's in the meta game currently and you know it's dominating, although it may be the best deck, there's also a larger chance that it's going to have an X on its head on the ban list. So we don't want that deck to end up in the grave and also our money ending up in the hole. So I just want to put that out there before we get into it. Now, moving on to what this part's going to be about, we're going to be talking about the core. The deck core, and why it's so important to pick a good deck core is that the deck core is going to be where you're basing most of your deck strategy around, whether it's supposed to function with a specific typing, a specific attribute, a specific archetype doing something unique. This is where we're going to begin, because I do believe this is where you can start to successfully pick decks that can be affordable and to pick decks that can help you out. So let's move into the criteria, at least what I've set up, to what I believe a good deck core should have. Starting off with the first one, it should never exceed your set budget. Now, the main goal of this series is to tell you guys, hey, if you only got so much money and you can only spend so much a week or 2 weeks or whatever it is, follow it. You don't want your deck core, or even you don't even want a single card going through your budget. And in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh, some cards singularly can easily cost over $40. So my point is, if you're going to set out a budget, don't pick something that's going to beat it out, because that's just not good in the long run. Also, the deck core should be flexible to allow adaptability. I do think if you're trying to make sure that you're able to play this game for a long time and you want a deck core that's going to actually maintain its, not even just its value, but its usage, you need to make sure that it's able to allow adaptability. Something that's too restrictive or too dependent on being one type of strategy is never always going to be a good thing. However, if it doesn't allow any flexibility, you're not going to be able to really tech it too much. So that means you're going to be forced to have to get new decks over and over. And finally, the third one I believe is very important, is that it should not be format dependent. If you have a deck that's too format dependent, then pretty much like the second one that I've stated with flexibility, you're going to have to replace it. And to be honest, format dependent decks are amazing. But once you get out of that specific format, like we had with Tier Elements and people were playing Exorcister, the decks might begin to struggle, because then again, its matchup isn't that good. Listen, this isn't also to bash any decks, by the way. That's just, kind of how Yu-Gi-Oh goes. So with those criteria out of the way, I'm going to show you 3 decks that I believe are actually very good and are just representations. There's lots of other decks I think that can fit these parameters, but these are the ones that I have with the most understanding as well as the budget premise, but also they give you a lot of diversity as well as showing you what you can do with your money. So let's dig into the decks. First off, we have, I think, what has become a budget staple and a budget friendly deck, and even more so now than ever before, and that's dinosaurs. So, dinos are fantastic. I'm not going to go through the whole shtick of, people telling you to buy the Dino Smashers Fury Structure Deck. That time is long since gone. However, thanks to Konami and their infinite wisdom, they have reprinted dinosaurs multiple times, all their main cards in different sets, so the cost of them has been down even low. And thanks to Wild Survivors, this deck is even cheaper than it once was. Now, we have a few builds of dinosaurs that I want to talk about just to give you guys some of the parameters I am talking about. So, first, we have Lost World Dinosaurs. Now, Lost World Dinosaurs is one that, if you haven't played this version, that's kind of understandable. It sees some play. It hasn't seen much play since the loss of Mystic Mine, but, that's neither here or there. The point is, Lost World Dinos focuses on you OTKing your opponent and using Lost World, essentially to give them a token so they can't target your dinosaur monsters, while you set up a board to essentially OTK them. The reason I really like dinosaurs as a strategy for you guys to try to understand with budgeting is that this deck is really flexible and that it can go from an OTK machine to being a defensive machine with different cards, and it also can be a grinder if you really have to. So innately, the deck has the pieces it needs to do it and to do it well. So that's what I want to put out there for you guys. Their next build that we're going to have is going to be the True King version. Now, the True King version is a little bit different than the Lost World version, although you could kind of have like this hybrid with them. But the reason I want to bring up this one is that with the True Kings, you're able to pop your dinosaurs, your baby dinosaurs, and get more monsters onto the field. And then Lithosagium the Disaster is just fantastic. You can play Agnimazod as well, and you could play your copy of the Dragonic Diagram just to pop more of your dinosaurs for more consistency. But I just wanted to bring this version up because this one does boast an insane amount of potential for combos and power. So these are cards that you probably don't want to skip out on. And if you could, I would say this version is definitely something you can look into, as it's not necessarily extremely combo heavy, but it's a little bit more of the mid-range variant of the deck, I would say. Whereas Lost World really wants you to kind of OTK. This version wants you to set up a pseudo board, but it doesn't have to be anything insane unless you're going the full combo route, which is what I'm about to talk about. But True King Dinos is definitely one you can choose. And also, the cards are cheap, so, don't rule out that version. Now, we're going to move into Combo Dinosaur. Now, Combo Dinosaur focuses with Scrap Raptor, Scrap Wyvern, and it really wants you to put out this really big board where you have all these negates. Now, this version is probably going to be the most expensive because you do have to play extra deck monsters that we do not incorporate in the other variants, just based on the fact that you don't necessarily need to run like a Borreload Savage Dragon in Lost World Dino or even the True King variant, because they're just not necessary in the extra deck. So in the combo dinos, it will give you the best chance to be more combo efficient and work on building this massive board, but at the same time, it's going to run you a little bit more money. But this is kind of why I wanted to go over this. Each variant kind of has your own set budget. So with the decks, if you wanted to pick up dinosaurs, you could work with a Lost World variant. Then if you want to spend more money later on, you can move into like the True King variant. And finally, once you have more than enough money and pick up the rest of the cards, you can go straight into having this variant, which is the combo variant of dinosaurs. And you can just try all three. And basically, you have, in theory, three decks in one. So that's one of the ways I wanted to put it out to you guys. It's just how I'm looking at making sure you can budget. Because after playing a while, I've had that with a few decks where I just build one variant and then I decide to jump to the next. So it allows you to just kind of work on how to save money. But ultimately, let's move into the price range. So Dinosaurs is extremely cheap. Like I said, thanks to Wild Survivors, you can literally have most of the core for this deck for under $10. And some people are going to say, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, we have multiple rarities for certain cards, and we have some of them to be extremely cheap, or some people don't like gold rares. I think gold rares are kind of cool, but, that's up in the air for what you guys want to do. But the point is, currently, you can have an entire dinosaur core, all rare, from Wild Survivors for under $10, and this is at the current time, so as of August. So the point is, I looked it up to double check. I wanted to make sure I wasn't wrong, and yeah, you can definitely build one for under $10. You just need to find the right seller. Cards are only like 11 to 10 cents a piece, and that's fantastic for what the deck does. So just want to put out there for you guys. Also, if you want to include an extra deck and a side deck, you're probably looking at about $25, $40. I would never tell you not to play like Ashes and stuff like that you need. And sometimes if you're just trying to build like maybe the going second version, you do need some extra deck staples. I'm not going to tell you to go grab an excess Code Talker if you can't afford it or something like that. You could probably do a Boral Sword if you want, but the point is, the deck's going to cost obviously about that range if you want to have something at least somewhat playable. It doesn't have to be meta contending, by the way, because I'm pretty sure people are going to give me that comment, but that's why I'll say watch the whole video, because that would be fantastic. But yeah, that's where we're going to go from there, as I do believe that this is the right price for something playable, and you could pick up all your cards for that. And also, I just want to say, you got to thank Wild Survivors if you're going to play dinosaurs, guys. It literally has everything you need. And I do know that about the Transcendosaurus stuff, but we're trying to stay budget here, guys. If I'm telling you to buy one $25 or $20 copy of Ground Zeno, that's not really going to be budget friendly, but you know, the point of this is you'll get to it at some point when you want to actually try that version. And Transcendosaurus and Metriosaurus, I think is what it's called, level 6 tuner, they are extremely cheap. So if you do want to pick them up out of Wild Survivors, go for it. Now, moving into one of my favorite decks that I used to make fun of, we have the Great Salaman or Salaman Great. So, Salaman Great comes in here as one of my deck choices for being budget, and some people will be confused as we do have the recent support coming out of Soul Burning Volcano, making this deck not so budget. But there's a really good reason why I want to put this deck on here, and this deck is here because it is extremely easy to pilot. Now, some people are going to say it does take some skill, and it does, but I mean, if you're a beginner, if you're someone who just never played this deck before, and third, you're someone coming back into the game, this is the deck to catch you up to speed with all the mechanics. Having its ability to have almost a singular strategy around basically building up a board, going into Baylinks, setting up your main combos, getting your counter trap, or getting into your other trap. I don't know why my mind's blanking on that one, but the point is, you're able to utilize this deck very efficiently and very universally. So it does, you know, allow you to kind of make some consolidations in your builds and also change the direction you want to. So I just wanted to bring that up. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk about Salaman Great is that, believe it or not, you can actually play a few variants of this deck. Now, they're not necessarily going to be top tier, but the point is, for this budget series, if you just want to work on, you know, playing and building, saving your money, this deck can get you there. So let's start off with the first build. And the first build is probably one of my favorite ones, and it's the easiest one. It's just the standard version of Salaman Great pre the Soul Burning Volcano support. Those cards are still great. I would never tell you not to pick up Salaman Great of Fire and Weasel and even Tiger, because they're really good. However, my point of this one is that if you did want to play Salaman Great and not have to worry about picking up the new support, you don't necessarily need to, but they do boost your consistency. So that's just one of the ways I would tell you could pick up the deck. However, you can technically play without Salaman Great of Fire, but I would never tell you that if you could afford it not to. But hey, you know, to each their own, and in time, as I've been saying before. But the reason is you still have a consistent core. A lot of Salaman Great's cards have come off the ban list. I think we're just waiting for Gazelle to go to more than one copy, and then this deck will take off to the races. I played this deck when it first came out from the structure deck, and playing it with 3 and 3, it was honestly one of the most fun decks to play, and it was honestly a good way to get started on getting more competitive, because it's one of the decks that I became more competitive with. This version also can include the OTK version if you want, which focuses on Fusion of Fire and Salaman Great Violet Chimera. That's a version that you don't necessarily need to play if you don't want to, but it's a version that I would never rule out, because it's just funny to cheese someone, because Chimera doubles its attack when it attacks a monster with a different attack, and then you just basically OTK them from there. So that is an option. Now, moving into the second one, which is the one that's probably going to be the most common one you're going to be seeing on the internet right now and on YouTube and stuff, is going to be the new Salaman Great support, focusing on the stuff from Soul Burning Volcano. which is going into like Raging Phoenix, using Salamangreat of Fire, Weasel, Tiger, basically just to accelerate your link climbs and build your boards more efficiently and establish more pressure on the board. So these are those cards that I just wanted to talk about. Pretty much, I don't really need to explain too much of them because I think you guys could probably watch a ton of profiles right now encapsulating what these variants are going to be. But as a quick rundown for mine, the amazing cards that are released in Soul Burning Volcano do accelerate the Salamangreat strategy. They give it a little bit more dimension and a little bit more usage than it did before. It doesn't make the deck like a tier 0 threat, but it definitely gets it to where it needs to be. And this is another thing. So although this is a budget video focusing more on picking up the deck cores, if you do already keep this deck core, because some people have already had it, this is definitely a good time for you to extend your budget to just pick up the remaining cards you need for the new support so you can play the deck. Now, that's why I kind of want to talk about the Salamangreat deck core. It's just really strong. It has all these components that it has extenders, it has manipulators, it has its technically own Foolish Burial in the form of Salamangreat Gazelle. You have recyclers and Jack Jaguar. You're kind of going the right direction with this core because it just does a lot of utility for what it is. And a lot of the cards are cheap, guys. After they reprinted them in Soul Burning Volcano, the main core of this deck just went down even more than it was before. And then finally, we're going to move into the last variant of Salamangreat, which is probably the one that I would say is not necessarily the most expensive, but it's almost there, which is basically just complete hybrid Salamangreat, which is like it has maybe the microcoder engine to search Signet Conflict. It might run a few more cards that are not so cheap, like Parallel Exceed, stuff like that. I mean, they're not too expensive, but the point is this deck really runs on trying to get more cards set up as quickly as possible, putting up the most powerful board. Some of the cards are too expensive, but some of them are. Point here is for this version of Salamangreat, you just want to focus on getting out the best possible board you can, and you use it with any of the cards that you can. Now, that's one of the versions that I've played as well. It's okay. It's not too bad. Now, I'm going to move into the pricing. So for Salamangreat, for its core, at least currently, I'm having it under $40. Now, this could easily accelerate, so I'm not going to just shoot my mouth off by saying, oh, it's always going to be that cheap. No. The reason I'm saying that is because if people start playing it heavily and the ban list is favorable, Salamangreat could actually easily re-enter the meta with its new support because its consistency has gone up a lot. And kind of, I mean, literally, it's just waiting on maybe getting, like most decks, cast your Rise Heart ban, because that really messes up a lot of graveyard decks. But point of the matter, I'm going to have the core under 40 because I will be, at least for this one, I would be remiss to not include Salamangreat of Fire. So those copies at least are running like at least $8 to $9, I think, right now. Competitively, it could go down, it could go up, but the point is adding those three already is $27. So for the rest of the core, it's going to be very, very cheap. And then I have with extra deck inside, I'm having about $60 to $80. And the reason why I'm having it a little bit more cheaper than I think some people would see is that depending on how you're going to build this, guys, really depends on what you're going to throw into it. Now, yeah, you could throw in triple tactics, talent, tasking, all that stuff to the side, but please bear with me. I'm not trying to throw all that in there. I don't think that's fair for you guys. But the point is, you guys will definitely be putting in some good staples and stuff like that into it. Also, you don't necessarily have to play Access Code Talker anymore. I mean, but I wouldn't imagine why you wouldn't. But the reasoning I have that is that you can play Raging Phoenix now and try to focus on more of a like pure Salamangreat extra deck with maybe a Code Talker extension, but it's not forcing you anymore. So I just want to put that out to you guys that this is definitely a viable option now. Hooray! And finally, for our third deck that I want to talk about, we have one of my favorite decks that was released, and that's going to be Crystal Beast. Now, Crystal Beast as a whole is a very unique archetype that was essentially unplayable for a very, very long time. It hasn't been until the last couple of years that we got support that actually made this joke deck viable, and for a short time this deck was actually competitive in the rogue status. And actually I think it actually doesn't get the justice it deserves. It's actually a lot stronger than it looks. It's very combo dependent, but depending on the build you go with, this deck is amazing. So let's just not bore you. We're going straight for combo Crystal Beast. Now, Combo Crystal Beast is one of the decks that, if you've never played against it, it's really confusing what you think they're doing, because they're basically getting all of the 7 Crystal Beasts out so that they can summon Rainbow Overdragon, and it's really amazing. Like, I've only faced against it, and it was kind of funny because I didn't know what they were doing. But besides my own personal feelings, this is extremely cool. A lot of the cards for this deck are available in a structure deck, so you don't really have to worry, as I'll talk about that later. But for Combo Crystal Beast, you're not necessarily getting the most expensive cards. You're mostly focusing on using your Crystal Beast and the cards that are related to it to essentially get your cards out and your monsters out, and it sets up a nice powerful board. So it usually uses some extra deck staples, and I think the most expensive one, at least at this time, unless you want to add like Access Code Talker, is like Cherubini, and you only necessarily need to play 1 copy for Combo Crystal Beast. So yeah, just putting it out there, this deck is actually pretty nutty. Now we're moving into Advanced Crystal Beast. Now, Advanced Crystal Beast isn't necessarily much more different than Combo Crystal Beast, because they're both combo decks. But what Advanced Crystal Beasts do is that they add a little bit more flair into their strategy. Like, they bring out a little bit more of the Crystal Beast decks with their own unique usage of their effects, and they kind of start to make a little bit more different boards, but they still work the same as Combo Crystal Beast. The only difference is the Advanced Crystal Beasts give you just a little bit more touch. However, they are dependent on the Advanced Crystal. They're on Advanced Dark, which is the in-theme field spell, because they need it to be on the field so that you can be on the field. But this deck is really unique, and if you want to try it out, I would not be remiss if you wanted to. And finally, I saved the best for the last. Honestly, I think the most powerful version of Crystal Beast you could play, and that's going to be Conclave Control. Now, Conclave Control has been popularized by the YouTuber Neshi. He's the one who actually, I think, started this. Focusing around using Crystal Conclave to bounce your Crystal Beast back to your hand. And essentially what you're doing is you're playing a slightly stun control variant of Crystal Beast, where you utilize cards like Crystal Miracle, you use Crystal Conclave, you use Sapphire Pegasus, which is arguably your most powerful play starter, and you just keep going back and forth by punishing your opponent, by summoning out your monsters, setting up some type of monster to cause a disruption or a floodgate, and you use your cards like Crystal Miracle and Conclave, as I said before, to control the board state and slowly get to that point where you can win. Now, this variant of the deck used to be a lot more expensive, because you'd have to run certain cards in the side of the main and in the extra deck, but because of certain reprints, we have been able to bring down the price. So like in the extra deck before, you did need to play Zeus, because you would really go into a lot of rank 4s. Because Divine Arsenal Double Zeus had a reprint recently, and we'll have another reprint coming up when we get that new deck building structure deck thing that focuses on teaching players, we are going to have another reprint, which will bring the price down even more. So if you're looking to pick up Divine Arsenal Double Zeus for any strategy, that's going to be talked about, and it's going to be in my next video, which is going to be about staples. But for right now, Crystal Conclave is the best version of the deck I think you could play on a budget, because if you wanted to, all the cards are available from the Crystal Beast structure deck, and you could literally just play this out of the box. You don't need to tune it out. You don't need to get any more cards. Now, moving into the cost, essentially, Crystal Beast budget is all hell. Now, the reason I say that is that if you really want to get Crystal Beast, set up, you can go online right now, go on to TCG Player, buy 3 copies of the Crystal Beast structure deck, and you're looking at spending probably about $18, because they're about $5 or $6 as of the time of my recording. And that's just fantastic, because I'm not just talking about the fact that you could buy the structure deck to get the whole deck core. I'm talking about it'll come with the side. It'll come with an extra deck. It won't be everything you need, obviously, but it'll be enough for what you're trying to do as a budget. It would be great. You'll get Ashes, you'll get Ghost Spells, you'll get Dimensional Shifters, you'll get Contact C, I think it's in there. You'll be getting a lot of stuff. So just putting it out there for you guys. So that's why I have the current price of the core $10 and under. This is also if you just want to buy the singles. They have commons, they have super rares, ultras, secrets. They have the whole shebang when it comes to having these cards. So if you just want to do the bare bones budget with commons, you're not going to go wrong. And the current price with the extra deck and the side currently, depending on your variant, I'm having $30 to $45. That's not an unreasonable unreasonable answer, because some of the variants, depending on what you're playing, and if you're going to play Crystal, Conclave Control, one thing you can play is Extravagance if you want. It's not necessarily the most efficient thing, but since you don't actually draw a lot in the Crystal Conclave Control, this is not a bad option if you want to do that. So just putting it out there for you guys, it's definitely something you could do. Like I said before, if you're not throwing an Access Code Talker or any of the big staple monsters, you're actually working with a lot more money than you think. Now, going into closing thoughts, I want to make this quick for you guys, but just some things for you to think about. Now, the first thing is going to be that rarity doesn't matter. Now, a lot of times I'll meet people that are saying, oh, well, this isn't ugly, like gold rare is ugly, these commons or rares are ugly. I just want to bring you into the most important thing, which is this. So you tell me what the difference is between both the Ultimate Conductor Tyrannos. Don't worry, I'll give you a couple seconds. Okay, did you figure it out? I didn't think you did. Well, the difference is simple. One's $50, the other's 11 cents. So why is that the case? The one on the left, well, is supposed to be a picture of a collector's rare. The one on the right is supposed to be a picture of a rare. Now, I'm not kidding you guys. They're literally separate pictures. I pulled them up from different things. But the point is, the difference is price. And the reason I want to bring this up is when you go to a tournament and you play the card, they're not going to say, well, that's a collector. The joke is always, oh, well, that's a secret rare, or that's a collector's rare, that's a starlight, it can't be negated, all that. That's a joke, though. When it comes to actually playing the game, you slam it down and be like, oh, it doesn't matter. A judge isn't going to say, oh, it's a rare, it's not going to work. No, it's a rare. It's a card. It's the same card. It works. That's what I want to get across to you guys. Rarity doesn't matter. If you're trying to save money and you want to work up your way to having more expensive cards, I mean, I've done that myself with some of my decks. I'm not going to knock you for it, but I'm just going to say if you want to save money going forward, it doesn't matter whether your deck is $100, $10, $15. If it's still playable, it's playable. Now, the second thing is losing is a part of learning. Now, a lot of times you're going to be playing with these decks and you're going to be like, oh, well, it's going to be tough against meta matchups. It just kind of is sometimes. Sometimes your deck just doesn't have the speed of a single deck. Maybe it loses to a Floodgate in the case of something like a Rise Heart in the metagame. Or heck, maybe you're playing against the Wombo Combo Synchro deck and they drop Red Dragon Archfiend King Calamity on you. And it's like, well, what am I supposed to do? Unfortunately, that's just a part of the game, and this is actually a part of learning how to get better. And there are instances where these decks lose to your decks. I mean, there's times where they think they're going to set up on you. Next thing you know, say you're playing like Conclave Control, and you just go ahead and drop the D-shifter on them, and they're stuck having to play through it, and they can't really, and then you set up your whole Crystal Beast board, you're ready to go. Or in the case of Dinosaur, they set up a really decent board, but then you play through their negates effectively, and next thing you know, Ultimate Conductor Tyranno literally comes in and just wipes out their entire field. So I just want to put it out there for you guys, is that it just doesn't matter necessarily if you win or you lose. It's more about learning and understanding how to get better at the game. So don't take it to heart if you lose with these decks. You're just getting it there, and you're trying to get better. And finally is the last thing I'll say, don't break the bank. And following your budget is completely okay. So the reason this video is ending up so long is passionately I've been able to talk about this easy because this is a lot of stuff I've had to deal with my friend group, with other people, and just in general. And this is one of the most important ones that I had to stick to because it was very important, because I've never had a lot of money to spend on this game until probably the last couple of years where my work started to pay me more and I didn't have to pay for much stuff. But the point is, save your money and all believe in yourself and believe in your budget. No one can determine how much money you've got, and no one can determine how much you can spend except yourself. So at that point, focus, keep your stuff together, and ultimately keep your wallet safe. Now, that's all I've got today. If you have anything, leave a comment down below. And if you want to, follow us on Instagram and Rumble as well. We have videos there. So this is Brad from the Red Army signing off. And for all of you out there to sign on.